So I've never done this before, so apologize for the raw, uncut footage. But I wanted to sit down and have a little chat about fascism, communism, environmentalism, and maybe a few other things while we're at it. You see, there's a lot of talk about both fascism and communism. Both sides are screaming about how they are the only answer and the other side is evil, and you got Antifa, and you got, people who think Hitler was a good idea, and just gotta tell you, it's a pretty insane time to be alive. Um, and I look at what is the cause of these movements. And, well, they can be boiled down to economic hardship. Socialists, communists, I'm just going to say they're both the same thing. I know they're not. Everybody get off my arse. I know that. I know they're not the same thing. But for the sake of argument and just simplicity, we're going to say that they are. Um, both of them are a product of financial hardship because socialism talks about the bourgeoisie and the proletariat and seizing the means of production. And the reason for the means seizing from the means of production is to empower the workers and the proletariat and redistribute wealth, and so there's no wealth inequality. So right there, it is about wealth inequality. Now, go on the other end of the spectrum to the fascists. If we go all the way to neo-Nazis and just Nazis in general, which apparently we have to address in this country, America now. So that Hitler was motivated by what he perceived as Jewish usury. So this goes back to the Weimar Republic in the 1930s and a lot of the how should we put this? Loose morals of the scene at that time. Open homosexuality, which at the time was considered very controversial, drug use, things like that, that in the 1930s was just absolutely taboo. And Hitler felt that these things were a product of, Jewish degeneracy. I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just saying this is the mindset. Um, and he felt that the economy of Germany was screwed over by the Jews in World War One because he felt that they had played dirty in getting the United States involved. It was a whole big thing. But when Hitler took power and kicked out, and by Jewish usury, I mean interest rates, borrowing at an interest rate and having to repay. When he abolished that and imposed National Socialism, the economy of Germany absolutely turned around. So again, I can argue that this is an economic issue. Whether you're communist, socialist, whether you're fascist, you're arguing because of perceived economic injustices. And you have your various, pardon me for saying it, scapegoats that you blame. And they are scapegoats. And this is why. First of all, fascism versus socialism is a false dichotomy. We live in a capitalist country. And people tend to forget that. They tend to throw capitalism under the bus, even though we all benefit from it. I'm not saying capitalism is great. Okay, obviously it's not. The corporate state sucks. And I'm about to get into that. But yeah, they like to talk like they're the only two alternatives. And they're not. And they're both short-sighted. They're both a product of the Industrial Revolution. But what was going on before the Industrial Revolution? Humanity has made it an awful long time without all this technology and bullshit. We have. Enter the Irish potato famine. Anytime anybody ever has to listen to me, they're eventually going to have to listen to me talk about the Irish potato famine because it is my life's mission to free people from the system, the proverbial system that both the fascists and the communists and apparently everybody else hates. I don't like them either. I'm more of the let's all go out into the woods, fuck the system, and let it all fall and just start our own eco commune. And you know what? I've got reason to back me up. The Irish potato famine, if you don't know, was back about 150 years ago. The Irish were growing nothing but potatoes. I'm sure some people had more in their gardens, but they're just growing a lot of potatoes. And potatoes are something that have to be rotated, crop rotations. The reason for that being that they strip the soil of nutrients, and if not rotated, eventually those nutrients run out, and you get disease and insect damage as the plant's immune systems are then compromised. Also, they were growing a low solanine variety. Solanine is the compound in potatoes that make them taste somewhat bitter. The higher the solanine content, the better their immune systems are. The lower the solanine content, the weaker their immune systems are. But that's the thing, they taste better. And potatoes are unique in the sense that everybody has opened their vegetable drawer in their fridge and found a sprouty potato. And that sprouty potato, if you were to, instead of picking off those eyes, picking off those sprouts, if you were to slice off those pieces with a little bit of the flesh, those are called potato slips. And you can put them in a little cup of soil and they'll sprout another potato plant. It'll give you about 5 pounds of potatoes, maybe even more, depending on how you do it. But about minimum 5. So this is what the Irish were doing. And this is where we get into food independence and how it relates to economic independence. And this is where I turn the blame completely back around on, well, everybody who isn't growing their own food. I always wondered why, when that happened, the Irish potato famine, why didn't they grow something else? I mean, that seems pretty logical, right? Well, Ireland is under British rule at this point, and everybody knows that Britain used to be an imperial power. Well, they started on England and Scotland and Wales long before they went out to India or anywhere else. And what they did is when this famine happened and they controlled everything, they wouldn't let them have any seed of anything else. I mean, why not grow some cabbages, right? They wouldn't let them have any seed. You can actually look up writings at the time from the House of Lords and House of Commons talking about how this was a godsend to civilize the Irish. The hubris was astounding, and I say that being part English. Instead, what they did was create poorhouses, workhouses. See, your typical Irishman and Scotsman, I'm also part Scottish, forgive the turn of phrase, would spend most of their time drinking, fighting, and fucking. Quite happily. They had their own independent holding, modest, small, growing their potatoes, maybe some sheep, maybe a cow, whatever. You can sell some sheep at market, make some money that way. You maybe didn't have the nicest clothes, you maybe didn't have the nicest house. But you know what you did have? Your independence and your own time. So it was real hard to convince a man like that he should go work for 16 hours a day and sleep in beds in shifts to possibly be scalped or ripped limb from limb by industrial equipment that did not have the industrial safety standards that we do now. So they used food, the Irish, or the English, used food as leverage. Because food independence is economic independence. Now, don't get me wrong, I've lived out in the woods and done this by myself for 10 years. And it's not easy to do it by yourself. You need a family. You need something, people. You need a community of some sort. You can't just do it all by yourself. But all y'all complaining about the economy, you stopped your ears for years to people like me. See, I did all this in the name of the environment because, well, it is the history of humanity all the way back to Sumeria to look at the country areas around the city as resource extraction zones. In Sumeria and in England, that resource just so happened to be labor. See, the Sumerians used to abduct the Guti, which were the hill tribes to the north, and make them slaves. Fun, isn't it? But those country folk, tend to eventually overthrow those empires because those empires get so far out of touch that they don't even know how to support their basic needs anymore, or they outstrip their resources that they can't. In the case of Sumeria, after thousands of years of agriculture and climate shifts that were a process of this, well, part of it was just nature, but part of it was also agricultural misuse. Salt built up in their fields to the point of where all they could grow was barley, and eventually they couldn't even grow barley anymore. Um, Food makes or breaks empires, okay? As does the resources of labor and any other thing. In Bronze Age civilizations, it was tin. In modern civilization, it is petroleum. Um, but we forget that food is the basis of it all, and nature is the basis of it all. In the words of Gaylord Nelson, the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the natural environment. And that's very true. Nature gives us everything. And these people who scream fascism versus socialism are so far removed from nature, it is astounding. Let me tell you, there's a third way. It's called Buddhism or Taoism. Those people have been turning away for centuries and living a life of contemplation in the woods. Buddhists beg, which you can argue, well, they're dependent on the system, and I would agree with you. But Taoists, especially Taoist hermits, go out in the woods and make their own life by themselves. And these people live purportedly anywhere from 200 to 800 years. Modern society kills. Hell, society throughout the centuries kills. So, yeah. Communism, fascism, it's all short sighted. And it's all a false dichotomy. It's a battle that's never won. Nobody's ever going to be proven right. And everybody's going to lose. Good night.